Please let me in.
The world ended. Didn't you get the memo?
You said it.
Come on, guys, let's go for a slice of pizza.
Yeah.
So fetch. What is fetch?
Oh, it's like slang from England.
I'm Charlotte Blackwood.
I'm Maverick.
Maverick? Does your mother not like you or something?
Chunk is dead. Don't say that. Never say that. Goonies never say die.
It's the Al Travis Show. We're lucky to have our next guest on. He's Senator Mark Koran, and via Starlink. Oh, this is very impressive. Senator, thanks for coming to the program, my friend.
It's always a pleasure.
Do you have copping experience? This is a new question. I wasn't going to ask this, but now I am because I've been sharing with Shannon Watson, who I like Shannon, but she threw out this, I have a friend who's a cop thing. Like, then she was more cop than me. My uncles, I have two uncles who were cops. I've been copping on Friday nights in the tough streets of Iroquois, South Dakota. So I don't give up the pro cop thing to anybody. You have cop in your family? You a copper in any way?
No, I'm pro law enforcement, but of course I had a grandfather who was in the St. Paul Reserves for some 45 years, and so
okay, you don't have to
a lot of it.
You don't have to shy away by comparison copping. Then you're got cop in your blood.
It's serving in this role too. I also do the ride-alongs, so you get the experience and understand. I'm a St. Paul boy, so I do in Metro a lot as well as our rural areas to make sure that our officers, like every other job, you can tell me what you do, but you can really never tell me what you do outside of your environment. So
no, absolutely. I'm just going to have to ask everybody that now because Shannon was just throwing that around. Oh, my dad was a cop, so I'm like more cop. I can't handle when people do that. Sorry.
Minimize it for them.
Well, yeah, it's like all of a sudden my uncle isn't good enough, or Iroquois wasn't the hardened streets that you were a part of. Yeah, I'll put the tough, mean streets of Iroquois against anybody. I want to ask you a quick question. Texas comes out, and they should have just done it, but the 50 Texan senators, they leave town because they don't want to vote on this redistricting that Texas wants to get done. It's going to happen at some point. They're just going to make a stand, kind of like Minnesota before this session started, but I digress.
Yes.
We seem to find out that most Americans didn't even know gerrymandering and redistricting happened. Seemed to be a stunner. And what do you know? It's the mean Republicans that are doing this. Clutch my pearls. The Democrats have never even thought of such a thing. How can these people crush democracy like this?
Yeah.
And then, because there is the internet now, way to go, Democrats, you start hearing these stories, start looking. There are states where 40% of the population is Republican and they don't have one representative in Congress. So this isn't new.
For democracy.
Minnesota,
You forgot to finish. For democracy. Yeah.
For democracy is best. This isn't new. Why are we clutching our pearls? And I got to be honest, Minnesota shouldn't talk. We've had the Supreme Court in Minnesota having to get involved last 10 or 15 years, right?
The last 7 cycles, 70 years.
Okay.
70 years, Al.
70.
Our Supreme Court has intervened. It's typically it's left up to the legislature, and they've had to intervene, but they've done a pretty good job. Knock on wood, when you look at the districts meeting all the criteria, the competitiveness. Did you redistrict how many Republicans and Democrats that end up in the common districts, or how many districts end up with zero, right? Basically technically open new seats. But I fear that may end. Our Supreme Court had at least a couple diverse opinions on it prior to the last year. So we no longer have any diverse opinions on the Minnesota Supreme Court. So there's been a nonstop push to you like this one, to have a nonpartisan nonprofit lead the redistricting. I don't know about you, Al, but I've never met a nonpartisan person yet.
Well, and I presume it would be appointed by the governor to these, wouldn't that be the easiest thing? Let's just have him.
Yeah. So that's one of the pushes. And what all those are code words for is we'd really like to rig it under the guise of inclusion and equity and all of those things to ensure that every Republican seat gets erased in Congress to start, and then to make sure a permanent majority in Minnesota state legislature as well.
Well, go back one step. So they yell and scream, Republicans, I can't believe they're doing such a thing. This is going to crush democracy. And for 2-3 days, that is what you read on your X and all the, at least on mine. That's all you're reading. But as soon as those other figures start coming out, Maine and all these other places where they're getting no representation, if you will, that really died down quick. Do you think this will sit with the American people and say, yes, bad Republicans? Is it going to sit with the American people and say, no, everybody does it? Or will it sit and say, we're going to make it stop? If that means AI, can't you use AI? AI, give us the least nonpartisan thing that can go on. Here's the things you've got to consider, populate, whatever. And just have AI draw the map. Say, here it is.
Yeah. Al, have you met an AI that is not biased yet?
Not yet. No, that's a good point. Yeah, so, we need an AI guy.
But applying the rules, right? When you look at the rules, and I would agree, mechanically, it's like everything else. All the solutions are fairly simple and straightforward. And I'm not, whether it's a medical solution, DNR, is it the biological science, the medical science, it always falls onto the political science and the grasp of power. And part of it's real, right? I mean, it's Republican, Democrat. It would be great if there was balance, but those that scream about it the loudest today is really, the gerrymandered Republicans are doing this, or, they're just trying to get some equal representation based on the voter population. And what they I take everything they say now as basically it's their confession through projection, because it really is what they've done forever. And not that, right, and we've seen it, right? You can blame some Republicans and Democrats, but you look at it holistically. I think what we're starting to see is people can no longer be completely contained in an information network, right? The younger population, especially 18 to 34-year-olds, they have so many diverse sources, and they're just learning today the foundational elements that create equal representation, census and redistricting, and that cascades to every political district. The one that to me is fundamental, why I believe the Democrats were all so willing to accept the tromping they've received from President Trump in the landslide victory, is they were comfortable because they robbed him of the political ability to execute on his agenda. And that started in 2012 when Obama removed the citizenship question from the census. And so both parties, right, were from pick cheap labor, whatever it is, that allowed illegals to come into this country, not to the scale that we had in the last 4 years, but it didn't ever affect the political makeup and composition of through allocation, the representation, the electoral college, and your funding. It didn't, because we had the citizenship question. We count everybody, that's the goal. But for apportionment, it should only be U.S. legal citizens, as it was in the past. Now you've probably got 30 or 40 million people that are now being counted, and representation is being allocated based on that. So they stole probably 25 to 30 seats, Republican district or Republican congressional seats, and they were comfortable with it because they neutered the political power to operate on the mandate that actually occurred. So the representation in Congress doesn't reflect the populist vote.
So let's just do this. Let's go this down because I think most folks would have imagined when we did the census, it was to count Americans. Do I care if a very large group of French people happen to be vacationing when the census guy came by? I don't care. So I would presume most of us believe that, but it hasn't been, like you say, since Obama. Trump's coming back and saying, nope, we're going to get this fixed. There's going to be a Supreme Court judgment on this, because it doesn't actually say that. It says to count everybody. Now, it doesn't mean you can't count citizenship for how your representatives are. Will they get this ironed out? Because if they do, this could be the biggest legacy of Trump, in my opinion.
It certainly should be. So you remember when Obama did it in 2012, he did through an executive order. Mm-hmm. And so Trump then in 2018 executed an executive order retracting it. And at that time, the court opinion was that, well, you had the right to do it. Certainly, if you could implement it through executive order, you could remove it through executive order. But they didn't like the reasoning why, because it appeared to be racist in the undertone. So I don't think they didn't actually rule on it. So it didn't reverse, right? It didn't allow them to move forward in the case that ruled it unconstitutional, or whatever the case was brought to the Supreme Court. They have to solve that because that's what puts balance back into the representation and to honor each citizen's vote. We talk about making sure one illegal doesn't erase a vote in Minnesota when our legislature is divided by less than 200 votes. And you think about 40 million erasing and influencing the political power, the funding. Do you think a California would be as excited to accept millions and millions and millions of people if there wasn't any political advantage to them? And the rest of the country subsidizing the cost of those non-citizens in their state.
The other end on that same thing, if we could, Trump, again, I think if he can clarify this and get the Supreme Court to say what it is, that will help us a ton.
Yes.
The other is birthright citizenship. It's in that same line. If we get you here and your parents here, it's here illegally. But guess what? I've had a child here. Now that's an American. We start counting it. And again, you're growing the population by doing something illegal, coming in illegally.
Yeah. Well,
do you think
I would add to that. I would add to that chain migration.
Yeah.
I would add chain migration to that because even birthright, right? The expansion and growth through birth, 1 a year, right? Under all of the refugee migration we've had. By the way, no Christian countries have been included in that rescue effort. You bring in a citizen, say you're here, you can bring in a citizen a year because you can't really have more than one in a year. When you turn 18, you can have many, 1, 10, 15 different family relatives that you can bring over. And it fundamentally changes the country and cities. We see it here in Minnesota, everywhere. In a very short time frame, and it doesn't allow for assimilation if assimilation was even a goal.
Do you see as Trump pushing these to get these to the Supreme Court to have this all figured out before he's gone? Because again, he could do an executive order for the next census, but that's not for another 5 years. So who knows who's in charge then? Yeah,
so I do. It is the fundamental piece to preserve this country as it was originally designed. Our founders were brilliant, and those that come here legally, Al, are the greatest and most staunch defenders of this Constitution because they've seen it, and they did come here for a better life and opportunity. It's the illegal immigration where you have no allegiance and no allegiance to this country, and being weaponized to fundamentally change this country and not for the better.
All right, we got to go to break. We'll be back with more. I've got him, Senator Mark Koran.
Achieving your financial goals requires individual planning and a comprehensive approach. At Midwest Money Management, our mission is to provide you with the knowledge, tools, and confidence to feel comfortable financially today and secure about tomorrow. Learn more at MidwestMoneyManagement.com. That's MidwestMoneyManagement.com.
Securities offered through JW Cole Financial Inc., member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services offered through JW Cole Advisors Inc., Midwest Money Management, and JW Cole Financial Inc. and JW Cole Advisors Inc. are unaffiliated entities.
Dust from livestock buildings can be harmful to your animals and to you. Coughing animals can lead to costly vet visits and other serious health problems. Now there's an environmentally safe solution for your dust problems. It's called Dust Lock. Dust Lock can control the dust all summer long with just one application. Protect your animals and your health with Dust Lock. Learn more at dustlock.com.
amongst friends. The Al Travis Show. Nothing but talk.
I've got him, Senator Mark Koran, on the program with us. Senator, since last time you were on, I don't think we talked about this one. I'm a little tired, obviously, of the frauds and one fraud after the next. And the latest one is this housing stability fraud thing that most of us didn't know anything about until a U.S. attorney says, I'm going to look into this. It would look to him that almost 100% of this thing went to fraud and nothing happened. And when you look at the way they set the program up, sir, you know what? I now feel it was set up to do exactly what it did. Give other people Al's money. Started at $2.6 million. A year later, it was $21 million. 10-time increase in the very first year. Bob, the guy running it, was he asked what's going on? Probably not. But now 4 years later, $104 million. We went from 8,000 homeless people to 21,000 homeless people. So we didn't get any homeless people off the street. That number has increased. We spend 10 times more money, and the Fed says it hasn't happened. What does our Attorney General and Governor do, sir? They stop the program until we can rework it. What?
If you use that criteria to stop the program because you were so incompetent you couldn't perform the basic tasks by agencies who their sole responsibility is to manage the delivery of those services, then we should be canceling all of them. Right? I mean, based on that, we can't do it, and we'll have to go back to the drawing board. Supposedly, they're the experts. And if they're the experts, we're not talking about rocket science here. We're talking about the basic, simple steps. Have you shown up? Have you gone to see? Did you do any verification of the
Is it a real human?
There 100%. But remember, the U.S. Attorney didn't just say, I'm going to look at this program. He looked at the program because the people that are in the program are already defrauding other programs. So the nexus between that spider web of what kind of finally went public, or when the public started to hear about through the Feeding Our Future. Remember, Al, they've only charged about $330 million of that $500 million. Yeah. They can't prove that any of that $500 million fed anybody that was targeted, that we already hadn't spent or funded at least 2 meals for each of those targeted children, in addition to the $500 million. So every time, this is a trend of expansion of Medicaid reimbursable services, right? You can do rents, you can do, there was another one under all the drug treatment providers. If they were doing gifting or incentives through offering housing. In the same expansion that Feeding Our Future took. A nonprofit got $800,000, $2.1 million, $199 million. The infrastructure to support and manage those things are massive. Daycare, it's the same thing. You can go down every single one of them. And I think Joe Thompson, our U.S. Attorney, is still being extraordinarily conservative. He's talking about what he thinks he can charge. Right?
See, but this isn't making me feel better, sir. A program that offered Al, the guy, to walk up to homeless guys $70 an hour. My attorney doesn't get $70 an hour. I didn't go to school for 4 years or 8 years to figure out how to do this. Walk up, talk to Bob, see if you can convince him to go into housing, and we'll give you 150 hours of talking. That's how much time. And you don't have to get him off the streets.
But it's all sold under the some social ill under the guise of kindness and compassion. And each of these, look what it's a state version of USAID. We just don't have one. It really is, because it's funding a non-profiteer network that is religious, non-religious, that is targeted all of these ills. Not a single social ill has diminished in need.
Exactly.
To spend billions and billions. And I would argue it's likely $3 billion plus on an annual basis, where we don't get a single value towards the social ill and the cause in which it's targeted on an annual basis.
See, some is how you write the law. I'm out of time. I got 30 seconds. Some is how to write the law. There's nothing in law that said anyone had to get. You didn't have to say, I talked to Bob, and Bob entered this facility, so here, go talk to them. We'll know he got there. None of it. We never even expected to get something to be better out of all this, except someone taking my money.
We do, as the legislature, we do. They've just enabled it. It's shocking they could even be charged. It's given away so easily.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. How do you charge some guy? You offered me $70 an hour to talk to a homeless guy. I went, spent 150 hours. He's now my best friend, and I got 10 grand. I got to go. I'm out of time. Senator Koran, thank you very much for hooking up and making this work with us. He's a great guy. Back after this.